All righty. Welcome, everyone. I can see Hamish and Mitchell. We've got a few attendees here. We are live. As far as I can tell, we're live on Facebook right now. If anybody can confirm that, just let me know. If you're watching this live in our Facebook group right now, that's cool. But if you want to participate, please jump into the group, and that way we can have a conversation. Anybody on the line right now? Mitchell, I can see you. Can you please just let me know if you can see me and hear me all right, and I'll know that my tech is working okay for the day. Simon's on the line, and you can just chat loud and clear, says Mitchell. Simon's here. Hamish is here. We're good to go. G'day, Simon. Good to see you. Simon, can you, Hamish, can you hear me and see me all right?
Yep, all good.
Excellent. Okay, so it's 101. So we've got a heap of people that have said that they were going to attend this session. And I want to be really clear. Attending and saying you're attending on Facebook is different to registering in Zoom. So if you want to actually participate in this presentation, this workshop, you'll have to go to Zoom and jump into the Zoom channel, and that way we can see your chats. So we've had quite a few people over the years, not just today or this week. We've had a long time talking about how do we sell more work? How do we get people to pay your price? And how do we not make it about price? I think it's a pretty fair thing to say that a lot of people think, well, they just buy from me because of price. You know, that's a common thing. And I want to just, today's session is going to be a short, sharp one. And hopefully I can give you a ton of value in a short period of time. But it is true that in order to learn why people buy, we've got to learn a little bit more around this topic. So I'm going to share my iPad with you today, and we're going to do a little bit of a workshop. I want to be really clear. What we're sharing with you here today is some of the stuff that we do in our GPS program. Of course, I can't share everything because that would take far too long, and nobody's in the program in this group. But I wanted to just share with you some of the massive wins that people get from our program and why they get them and how we work them through it. We talk about trying to get, the price that you want to get for your job without making it a debate about money, right? How do you get higher conversions? And there, this isn't a one answer to everything, but there's a few little gold nuggets that I'm going to share with you today. The other thing I wanted to just talk about a little bit is the fact that, we've come from a period of time where things were okay. I don't know whether your business was doing exceptionally well. Quite often we say, well, if you were green and growing, you were probably doing this. If you were struggling along a little bit, maybe this was like a black line. And if business before the virus was trouble for you, maybe you were sort of feeling like the business was sort of tanking a little bit. And then good old COVID-19 hit us, right? That's where this happened. And what happened, I think everybody kind of consolidated and started sort of feeling like, okay, now we've got this problem. In our GPS program today, we talked about going from playing defense to offense. And what that means is we're kind of coming through a period of time right now where we went from this period of time here where we were playing defense, where we were sort of saying, how are we going to actually get through this? Let's get some money from the bank. Let's batten down the hatches. Let's get JobKeeper. Let's put everybody on a 3-day work week, right? It was just this space of time in here was, how are we going to defend our business so that we're going to get through this? And I think what's happening now is we're coming out the other side and we want to switch from defense to offense. Hamish is a Hawthorne supporter. I think it's fair to say, Hamish?
I'm both Hawthorne and Bulldogs.
Right. They probably need to learn how to play better offense and defense, would you say?
Both would help with both of them.
We were talking about American football this morning, so to put it into Aussie terms, defense and offense is relevant for virtually every sport. So this period of time in here, when we talk about offense, we're talking about closing more sales. We're talking about having the customer trust you more. We're talking about doing more so that we can get back on this path where your business is actually, thriving, not just surviving, right? So that's kind of where these little things are coming from, is we want to help you switch from offense to defense and learn how to, now that we're through this period of time of, what the hell is going to happen and this uncertainty, now we're going into, okay, now we're getting leads. Everything is sort of going back to regular customer reactions. Let's get into an offensive situation. So let's talk a little bit about what you really want. You know, when you get a customer that, you know, that you're working on their price with them, what do you really want from that? You know, you want new customers, right? That's really what you want. You want new customers. But I would suggest you don't want just new customers. You want new A-grade customers. Wouldn't it be terrible? And this probably happens with a lot of people. If, you know, you sell 2 or 3 jobs and you find out that they're a real problem after you've done the job and they're not paying you. Let's not find out after you finish the work, or even 3/4 of the way through dealing with the customer, that you've actually decided to work with a D-grade client. We want deposits to start your work. That's true. We don't want to have to wait until we've done 20,000 designs for someone until we get a deposit. So why is it that we don't do this? Why is it, in this industry in particular, why is it that the joinery industry seems to take this stuff on board so much more, with so much more resistance than a lot of other industries? And I'm being really straight up and honest with everyone here today. I work in other industries and we talk about working through objections, and we talk about raising our conversion rates, and we talk about working with A-grade clients, a lot of people kind of take that on board. But in our industry, it's sort of, oh, mate, look, I just want clients. I just want to get. Why is it that in this industry, it seems like it's really difficult to even have this conversation? I'm going to suggest a few things here. I think what happens when we get to the closing stage, because we're so comfortable with designing the kitchen, drawing the kitchen, when we get to this closing stage where we have to actually ask the customer, do you want to work with us? We get a little bit nervous with that. Like, it's an uncomfortable question. It's an uncomfortable thing to have to ask. So what we do essentially is we email and pray. We do all of this work for the customer, and then we just email it off and just pray that it's going to convert, because we get a little nervous. And that might be because we lack confidence in how to close the sale, or how to take someone from, you know, working with them as a prospect and into a client. And the problem is that sometimes we push during the process, and then the customer just pushes back, and that becomes awkward and difficult in some cases. So then we just say, okay, well, here's our price. Let me know what you think. So there's all kinds of things. And really what we want to be doing is we want to be pulling the customer through the process so they're willing to take the next steps. Now, there is a process to this. And just like putting cabinets together, just like assembling cabinets, just like installing cabinets, just like making a staircase where you've got the rise and the run, the rise and the run, there's a process to doing this. And what we really want to do is we want to take on board the fact that there is a process. And when you do a process the same way every single time, you get the same result, or you get a repeatable result. So we want to have people go through the process. And one of the things that I want to make really clear is that when people enter your world, when they decide to join you into some sort of a conversation, we don't want you to have to sell to them. We want to have those people going from cold to warm on their own. And when you look out on a lot of the stuff that's out on social media, whether it's a website, whether it's your Facebook page, whether it's your YouTube channel, whether it's your Instagram, whatever it is, the majority of people in this industry are showing kitchen, 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 and there is no humans. There's no interaction anywhere. So there's no connection built. So sensibly speaking, when a client comes in contact with you, they're going to say, you know, show me what you do. They've seen it, but it's not necessarily for them. So one of the things that we've really got to take on board is the fact that social media, marketing, even if people aren't on social media, there's ways to connect with them. And it doesn't have to be a human contact. It can be, we call it throwing out trust nuggets. So the more someone trusts you by the time they contact you, the more likely they are to want to buy from you, or the more attractive you are to them. I don't know about you, but if you see a really attractive person, it's proven that humans tend to trust someone they find more attractive. So if you are more attractive to someone, they're going to trust you more. So what we do is we like to sort of follow 4 main principles in our sales process. We want to learn how to make a connection. So making a connection with people is, hey, if you have a website, Maybe a picture of you should be on the main page on the website. If your website has an About Us page, maybe what you should say on your About Us page is something about you, not about what you do, because that's not why they go to the About Us page. They go there because they want to learn about you and they want to make a connection with you. And anybody listening to this right now, if you have a website and there isn't an image on the main page, think about putting an image on the main page, because that makes a connection immediately when people land on your website. If you have an About Us page, consider very strongly making that about you and your business and a little bit about your backstory. How did you get into this business? Give them a reason to care about you and your business, and give them a reason to want to connect with you on a personal level. So make a connection and lead them to value. At some stage, you're going to make a promise. And at some stage, we're going to have to learn, and this is really important, we're going to have to learn how to remove objections. So going back to the email and pray method, much like, and I hate to use this analogy, but much like buying a car, you don't sit at home and purchase a car. You go into their office and they've learned how to remove objections when people come in. So much so that sometimes you put the underbody protection on, you didn't even need it in the first place, but they've removed your objections. So you say, go ahead and do it. I'll put a little context around this. I come from the cabinet industry like most of you, and was taught how to, build things. I'm a cabinet maker, so was never really taught how to sell and close. And I'd always thought that those people that were great salespeople were born salespeople. You hear that quite a lot, right? Where you hear someone say, oh, he's a born salesperson. He could sell ice to an Eskimo, those sorts of comments. But it's really not true. I threw myself into a group of, let's call them unsavory characters, the sort of people that you just were kind of feel uncomfortable with, the people that were closers, those salespeople that generally we don't want to deal with. But I willingly threw myself into that mix, and I wanted to learn, what was it that made someone a good salesperson? What was it that they learned to do that got them higher conversion rates? And I learned a ton of things. I learned a lot about this isn't just something that they're born with. They actually follow a process. They actually go through things in a very strategic way. And so removing objections in a conversation with a potential client is one of those things that they were taught how to do. And if someone isn't prepared to sit down with you and talk about, what we're going to do and remove objections, then maybe they're not ready to buy from you anyway. And that conversation needs to wait until they are ready. So removing objections is a really important part of this process. And the other part of this is you need to be clear that you're not selling anything, right? If anybody's taking notes right now, one of the things you want to write down is stop selling. Mitchell, Simon, have you guys heard that term before and been a little bit confused about it? Or I'll get a little bit of feedback from either of you right now. If you've heard that term, what did it mean to you? What were some of the things that you would put as far as clarity around that meaning or that statement? Stop selling. You're not selling anything. I was told not to sell, but to solve problems. So I guess the same thing. Yep, solving problems certainly can help. Absolutely. What I learned is that if you don't have steps through your process, then you won't know what the next step is. And if we're comfortable saying that we sell things, I would say consider the fact that if you're selling anything, you're actually selling the next step in your process. It might just happen at some stage that the next step is a close. Do you want to purchase this thing? That's the next step. But as long as people are trying to sell their thing, and it happens early on, right? That's why we put pictures of our kitchens, because we're trying to sell the kitchen. If you show the reaction of your customer and you think what I'm actually selling is the emotional reaction from my customer, if that's actually what you think you're selling, people will get closer to you because that's what they want. They get it by getting the cool kitchen, but if they see pictures of a cool kitchen and aren't happy with it, then the cool kitchen didn't mean anything to them. So if you're selling anything, you're selling the next step in your process. But at the final step in your process, it's then not about selling, it's about getting hired, right? So if we stop thinking about the fact that we have to sell something, we stop pushing people. Because as soon as you push people, they push back. And what you want to do is you want to take them along a stage where they kind of get to a point where they trust you enough to say, yeah, I'll give you my money. And this is sort of one of the other revelations for me was the biggest, most important thing in any sale process is if they have to trust you. And if they don't trust you, if someone doesn't trust you, they will not part with the money out of their hands, right? So trust is the ultimate goal in a sales process. Once they trust you, they will trust you to do what they hope. So think about moving them to the next step. So just to put this into context, we want to be working with ideal clients. We want to know one thing you're great at. Our marketing strategy wants to attract people to you. And what we're talking about here right now is a conversion strategy, something about how you're going to convert people without it being about price. And this has a little bit of our attraction part to it and a little bit of our conversion part to it. So it's a bit of a crossover in what we're actually trying to achieve here. Okay. Mitchell, Simon, any questions along the way? I don't know if we're getting questions on Facebook page right now, but I got a thumbs up from Matthew Harrison. Looks like we got a few people watching. All good for me, says Mitchell. All right, so if we map this out in a timeline today in a perfect sales process looks like this. You're primarily working on making you and your stuff, your business, your people, whatever it is, as attractive as possible. Once you are really attractive to your target client, they will contact you. So in marketing, essentially all we're trying to do is we're trying to become really, really, really extremely attractive to our target client. The more attractive you are, the more likely they are to then make contact with you. Now, in the old days, we used to do this by cold calling. We used to do this by having conversations. So our conversion process in the old days kind of started kind of like this. And that's why the closing rates in the old days were really low, is because cold calling had like, a really low conversion rate, and it took 5 or 7 or 8 times to make contact before they'd actually convert. So right now what's happening is we're taking advantage of technologies that are out there to do this for us through our marketing strategies and our marketing implementation stuff to warm people up, take them from cold to warm by putting stuff out on social media that they'll respond to, or ads, or your website, or anything like that. And once they really are comfortable, then the conversation happens. So, this is important that we build market authority. It's important that we have a marketing strategy, and it's important that we have a conversion conversation process mapped out. It's making sense, guys? Give me a little bit of a thumbs up or a yep. I'm going to throw a ton of stuff at you here. No doubt you can watch this again. So the journey so far is, number 1, get attention. Number 2, get people to get interested in you, make a connection personally, build trust. This personally means not you actually doing it. It means make it personal, make it something that makes a connection between humans, right? Show you, be vulnerable, be real, show your team stuff that makes it personal. That's how a connection is made. I put a little thing out a little while ago, and a friend of mine in a program that I'm in said 2 things. She said, selling is a contact sport. And I thought that was just such a cool way of putting this, because selling or putting your stuff out there is about making contact with the people you're trying to attract. So think of it like this. Selling is a contact sport, number 1. Number 2, conversions only happen in conversations. Conversions happen in conversations. So you're not selling something from a shopping cart system. You're selling something that is a process that people have to get to know you and trust you. It's not something that someone can go on a website and click, yep, add to my shopping cart, and away we go. Conversions for you happen in conversations. So we've got to make sure those conversations are continuing right through to the end. So at some stage, you're going to build enough trust and someone's going to want to have a chat. And we're going to talk here briefly about what happens in that very first point of contact where you're having a conversation with someone. And I'm going to ask Simon and Mitchell, the 2 guys that are on the line here, what would you want to do when you first make contact with someone? The very first call. Hey, Simon, just calling. We're thinking about doing a kitchen. What would your first reaction be to that initial conversation? What do you need to do from that first conversation? A lot of people like to hesitate. You feel like I'm setting you up. How did you know about us? Cool. That's actually an excellent question. I will tell you, Simon, with respect, you've jumped a step, but it's only you've jumped to step 2 instead of step 1. So I'll tell you what step 1 actually is. But great response. How did you know about us? That's great. You're not selling, you're actually asking them to give you something. So it's engaging in a conversation. That's never a bad thing to do. So what we really want to do is we want to talk about, and that first meeting, we don't want to jump to all the conversations, all the intricacies, all the details. People will get bored and bogged down in the details. In the initial meeting, we want to make sure that they love the result, and then you can work back to the details. But let me just suggest a few things that we know for certain have got exceptional results for the people that we work with. And please keep in mind, everybody that's watching this, there is nothing we put out there, particularly in these types of formats, that is in beta testing in any way, shape, or form. We would never put out for public consumption anything that's in beta testing. These are all methodologies that at least a couple of hundred cabinet shops, maybe 1,000, we're not counting, but certainly a lot of people in the joinery industry have implemented and got game-changing results from. So it really comes down to your courage to implement. We don't have any question whether if you do some of this stuff, whether it will or won't work. We don't know the degree, but we know that it will work. So if we talk about this first step here, where we're trying to talk about when a conversation actually happens, how do we actually convert that person into a paying customer without it being about money? It'll only ever be about money if you make it about money. That's the first thing to realize. It's about money if you make it about money. I had a conversation with a client yesterday, Josh from Vogue Creations up in Caloundra, actually. And he was dealing with a builder and trying to land a fairly large project, and he was worried about his price going in being the right price. So I just simply recommended to him that what he needs to do is go back to the builder and ask, what are your top 3 to 5 requirements for us to win this work? Just get the builder to feed that back to you. What do we need to do to win this work? What's the top 3 or 5 things that we need to do exceptionally well for you to give us this work? A very interesting thing happens when you do that. They'll tell you. And the other interesting thing that happens is price is never the top one on the list. It's part of the list, but it's never the top. And if it is the top, they're probably not an A-grade client. They're probably someone that is going to choose the cheapest price, and you probably don't want that to be you anyway. So it's a good filtering process. And when you ask this question and they say to you, well, we need you to make sure that when you're on site, you're neat and tidy. We need to make sure that you reply to your emails quickly. We need to make sure that you meet the brief, whatever is in the spec sheets, it has to be like that. And we need your price to be fair. If they say to you, we need you to be the cheapest price, it's a good reason to, exit stage left. So this onboarding process, bringing clients in to see you is about how we stop making it about price. And it's about how we build value as this goes through the process. Well, I want to just pause for a second here and suggest something else for everybody to consider. If you think about all the stuff out in the world that you purchase, let's think of things are high, like a high priced sort of an item, right? Or a low priced item, or something that's easy to purchase. In other words, they would do it for you because you paid them. Or it's kind of hard to do, like your sort of work where there's a lot of design work, there's a number of meetings. It's kind of hard to get through this, right? There's a number of processes we have to go through. So if you think of someone like a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, right? How easy is it for them to do their work? Well, if you're, let's say, just a general accountant, it's fairly easy. You go to them and their price is sort of like this. But the more work they do, like a lawyer will stand up for you in court, it's easier for you because they stand up in court and they're way more expensive, right? So let's put this into context. What did these people need to do in order to get this price? Well, they had to get better at what they do. They had to get a lot better at what they do. So let's think about you and your business. If you want to get this high price, unfortunately, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but unfortunately what I see, a lot of people have done absolutely no real learning and adding of skills and knowledge. They just expect people to buy their thing because they think it's wonderful. And it very well might be a wonderful kitchen, but the customer doesn't know that. So we see a lot of joinery businesses, in this space right here, in what they have learned on how to do this, but expecting this price here. And of course, it just doesn't work that way. You've got to go through a long period of time to learn how to get the price that you actually want. So we're talking today about some of the things that you actually have to take on board and implement in order to get this price that you're wanting up here. It doesn't just happen. People just will not, there's a process to go through here. So you've got to be willing to do this and this and this and this. And of course, it's true. The lower the price of the kitchen, the less you have to do to earn it. You could probably sell $4,000 kitchens all day long without too much effort, right? So please be aware that the higher your price, the harder it is. It's going to be harder. So yeah, we'll go back to this model here where we talk about what's the actual process to go through when people make contact with you. We had a stand-up meeting with the GPS group today, and one of the things that everybody said was the best thing they ever did in the whole world was get a call booking app. And if you'd like to learn more about how to get a call booking app and how to implement it into your business, your website, your sales process, when we're done here, just send me a DM and I can talk to you about it. But when you can get people to book a chat with you, what that means is they've gone through this and this and this and this, and they've gone from cold to warm, and they've said, right, I think I want to have a conversation with this person. Now, as soon as you start having this process, the process here that I'm showing you is not designed to sell. It's designed to work like this, where our goal is actually to build trust. Okay, so everything through this step is about building trust. If someone phones you and says, hey, I'm thinking about doing a kitchen, can you come out and measure up? And you just run there to measure up. Everybody does that. And you're on the same playing field as everyone else. But if you say to them, okay, eventually we'll measure up, but the most important thing right now is we get to know you, and we've got a really wonderful showroom. We'd like you to come down and see our showroom. We'll show you, we can talk about colors and designs. We can go over a little bit of costing. Maybe we can talk about that. But once you get people willing to come into your showroom or meet with you, that's the first step that they're willing to take. Now, this first step here where you've had a chat with them and then you've convinced them to meet you, preferably in your showroom, and I'll be really straightforward about this. I would say that even if you don't have a showroom, you should be willing to meet them in your office and show them your factory. If you're not proud of your factory, then you're not going to be able to build as much trust. But your factory and how it looks should be something that you're willing to show people, and it adds to the value and the trust of people working with you. Does that make sense? Simon, Mitchell? Yep. Hamish, anything you'd add at this point?
Spooky that you're talking about having the factory as a state that you happily show off to people, because that was the conversation I was having this morning with a client in South Australia. So yeah, if you've got a factory that you're proud of and people can see that you're proud of it, that's a way of building that trust, because they know that you're going to do a good job. You're going to be tidy in their home, because that's where you keep your factory.
And it also has an effect on you as a person, I think. We had some friends over on the weekend, and our initial thought was, okay, these people are going to be over. We looked around and we said, well, what do you clean up? We got to clean up the dishes. We got to put, we just immediately felt like if someone's going to come here, we've got to make it look presentable and tidy, right? That's how people react. That's just a human reaction for most people. It has to extend into your workplace as well, right? If we don't look around where we're working and feel the same way, if somebody shows up here, what are they going to see and feel about me as a person, about me as my business? If that isn't important to you, it's certainly important to your customers showing up. People buy from people. They just saying what Simon here, they have to like you. They buy from you, especially when your product offer doesn't exist on the shelf. Yeah, so it really is. People buy from people. That's so true. So if you don't have a showroom, which a lot of, some joinery businesses don't have this official showroom, You should at least make a meeting area someplace where you can meet with people. Without a doubt, without any exception, this being the first step, this one right here, where you are actually requiring people to come to you first. If someone says to me, of my conversion rates, we sell 20 or 30, 40% conversions. That means that 60% of all the people you're dealing with aren't buying from you. So whatever your non-conversion rate is, by requiring people to come and see you, you will very likely weed out a lot of those non-converters. Now you're not dealing with people that are wasting your time. Okay, so this is probably the first thing that takes the most amount of courage for a lot of joinery businesses, is to insist that your first step after having a chat with them on the phone is to come in to meet with you somewhere. And then of course, after that happens, you will then go and do a measure up. You might then begin estimating. You might have a second consultation at that point. But whatever you do, it doesn't have to be this exact process. You've got to have a process. So when people come and meet with you in your controlled environment, it's much like the car salesman, right? You don't buy a car from the comfort of your recliner in your living room. You buy it when you go to the car salesman. So get people to come into your showroom. And that is the first way to start building trust, because you're making a connection. They're seeing that you've got this great factory. That's the great way to build trust. I would also suggest to everyone that the measure up is not as important as you think it is. A lot of people think that we're trying to sell the kitchen when we go and measure it up in someone's house. Some of the most successful clients that I've had over the years are business owners that send their lead installer to do the measure up, because their only reason the person's there to measure up is to get the measurements and maybe talk about time frame. But that's it. That's the only reason you're actually going to someone's house to measure up. It's to get the dimensions so that when they do buy the kitchen from you, we've got our dimensions right. It's not a social gathering, and it's not a place to try and close a sale. That said, a lot of places do try and close sales in people's houses because we want to push the sale forward faster. I don't recommend doing it. I recommend doing it when you can sit down with them and go through the deal. So that's the process that we recommend. And what I'd also say is that once you do this right, it looks a little bit like this. Understanding what someone values. Now, this is a word that you hear quite a bit, particularly when we talk about factory and lean, we talk about value. We often ask people, how do you define the word value? Like if you go and buy a pen or something and you identify value in it, therefore you buy it. What did you define value? How did you make a decision to buy it? We won't go into the intricacies of this. I'll just give you the answer. The definition of value is anything that somebody will pay money for. That's the definition of the word value. Anything that somebody will pay money for. Your job when you're trying to close a deal is to figure out what that anything is, not to try and close the deal. Because if you figure out what that anything is, then you can circle back and provide proof that you're going to deliver that. But without knowing what that anything is, without knowing what this customer in front of you actually values, trying to sell your kitchen could be about price, because you're not aligning your price or your offer with what they value, right? So how it often looks, you've probably seen me draw this from time to time. Let me do this again. So if you are Joe Joiner and you throughout the day you work in your business, what are the things that you think about in your head most of the time? Simon, I know you're the business owner, I believe. So what are the things that go through your head as an owner? Primarily, what is it that drives your thoughts or dominates your thoughts? Things like paying bills, things like paying wages, things like, wow, how long have you got? I don't want to know everything. Just the dominating features. Is it fair to say, yes, I just say yes or no. Is it fair to say that as a business owner, the things that often dominate our thoughts are money-related things? Fair or fair? Yeah, okay. Again, we'll fast track this a little bit. So the reason that most people think the sale is about money is because the things that are dominating your thoughts, not your customers, your thoughts, are money-related. And it's been proven that the things that dominate your thoughts also dominate your actions. So if your thoughts are predominantly one thing, it will come out in your actions. Proof of this, a friend of mine and I were entering a cafe. We walked in, the sliding door opened. It had a sensor on it. We walked in, bought our coffee, and we went to walk out again. And we walked up to the sliding door, and the person with me was first. The door didn't open. The person walked back and walked up again. The door didn't open. The person walked up and walked back again and did this a number of times, and the door still didn't open. Confusion. What the hell's going on? I don't understand. I've done this a million times. Your brain's telling you, you don't even have to think about this. Just walk up to the door and the door is going to open, right? You're pre-programmed to do it because you've done it a million times. A few seconds later, the guy sitting down said, "Oh, sorry, dear, you've got to actually touch the door for the door to open." And it was only then that the person I was with actually saw this big red sign at eye level right in front of her saying, "You have to touch the door for this door to open." Your thoughts dominate your actions. And in that case, done this a million times, this door is just going to bloody well open, even though the sign is screaming out at you. You didn't actually see it. Your brain actually shut off that thing that you're looking at, you should see. So if you're a business owner and your thoughts are about money, you're going to think that your client's thoughts are about money, but they're actually not. So in this case, when I asked Josh to ask his customer, what is it that would, get this thing across the line? They gave Josh 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, a whole list of things. 4 was about money. Okay, fair enough. You've got to be competitive in price. The first one was the first one. Now, these things here are value, right? These things here are the things that you need to know because you want this person. This is a gut, by the way. Let me draw this a little bit farther up. It's not phallic in any way. This is a gut. In most cases, if this is a new client, never dealt with them before, never bought from them, you want them to make a gut decision. I bought a Dyson vacuum cleaner, for example. I had a gut decision it was going to be the right thing, but I'd never bought a Dyson before. I parted with $800 to buy a bloody vacuum cleaner. Completely ridiculous in my world, but I did it because I had a gut feeling. The only way I got that gut feel was I saw Mr. Dyson on the TV and I trusted that it was going to happen. I visualized that it was going to vacuum up all the dog fur. And so I went and bought the Dyson. Even though the Miele lady was there in the Good Guys store showing me features and benefits, she was physically there. I'd already decided to buy the Dyson because I had a gut feel it was going to work. A gut feel is not something that just appears out of nowhere. A gut feel is something that you can give someone. And you can only give someone a gut feel by forgetting what's in your head, working out what's in their head, put it into words that they understand because it's the things that they value. There is a saying out there in the world that says, when you can articulate someone's problem better than they can, they will identify you as the person to solve it. Let me just say it again, just so everybody got it. When you can articulate someone's problem better than they can, they'll identify you as the expert to solve it. So your goal here is to ask enough questions to get these answers, put it into your own words. Hey, sounds like what you're looking for is a kitchen that is going to be an entertainer's kitchen. It doesn't have to be a working kitchen. You're 65 years old in life and you want to entertain people. So we've got to have a wine rack. We've got to have a wine fridge. We've got to have different heights. We've got to have entertaining spaces. Sounds like that's what you're looking for. That happens to be what we do all day long. I've just taken something that someone said to me that they're looking for and I fed it back to them. When you feed that back to them, that's where they get their gut feel that you're the right person to do it. So you can actually create a gut feel by doing this process. And when that happens, they're going to say something like, they're a little bit more expensive than the other guy, but I've got a gut feel I think they're going to be the right choice. It's a gut feel that people need in order to get over some of their objections. Simon Mitchell, does that make sense? Cool. All right. So I'd like to just sort of say to you that the first step, I'll give you another little value bomb here. I could go for 4 hours on this, but the first thing that is the most important thing is the initial conversation. This is where everybody has found the most important step. This is what we call the fit, no fit conversation. Simon, when I asked you about what's the first thing you did, you said you're going to ask them a little bit about them. That's perfectly fine. But I think what the most important thing is to find out initially, are they an A-grade client? Because if they're not, it doesn't matter how they found out about you, you probably don't want to work with them. So number one in the first conversation is figure out if this person is actually your A-grade client. So a good example of this is if someone phones and says, hey mate, I've just sent you some drawings of a kitchen we're thinking about building. Can you get back to me with a price? And you say to them, yeah, we can get there. But what we do next is we want to meet with you and ask a few questions. No, sorry. That's just sounds like too much work. Can you just get back to me with a price today? And if that's all they're saying, then they are definitely not an A-grade client. You might want to say, look, I'm sorry, but it's just not, we're not a good fit for you. So that first part of the conversation, are they an A-grade client? Are they approachable? Do you want to work with them? Remember, you are the Simon Cowell, not them. You're auditioning them, not them auditioning you. So are they an A-grade client? And the second thing is, and you might want to write this down if you're not getting it, are they qualified? So I'm going to ask Simon and Mitchell another question. When I say qualified, give me a few examples of what means a lead would be qualified. What are some of the requirements for them to be qualified? I'm actually genuinely curious how you define the qualification stage. Okay, they're a homeowner, yes. What else would make them qualified? Know their budget, their time frame, ready to move, age demographic fits the business, all of that. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of advice here. Forget about all of that. That has nothing to do with qualification. If you think about qualification being two things. Number one, how do they know about you? What do they know about you? Do they want you? And do they want you now? When I signed up for the coaching program that I'm in, I stalked my coach for about 6 months. I watched him online. I sent him little messages. You know, there was a 6-month period of time where I was watching him. So he was building up trust with me by, you know, stuff just being there on social media to a point that I actually had a conversation with him. And when I actually had a conversation with him, he asked me a very straightforward, very blunt question. He said to me, Bruce, cool. I'm really glad we're talking. I can see you've been stalking me for the last 6 months because we have systems to see all this stuff in the back end. And he said, okay, so you've called me, you've booked a call with me. And he just said, why me and why now? So qualification has to mean that you need to work out, do they want you and do they want you now? Because if you're having a conversation with them and it's not that, if the reason you're having a conversation isn't because they want you, they're not qualified. It means that they're going to want you to sell to them. They're going to want you to convince them that you're the right person. If they haven't done that yet by the stuff that they should have already seen, what you might want to do is get them to circle back and say, okay, what do you know about us? They say, nothing, mate. I just saw your truck. Cool. What I'll do is I'll send you a link to our YouTube channel or our Facebook page or some of our videos or some of our stuff. I'll have you look through it and then we'll have another conversation tomorrow. They're more qualified then. But if they haven't seen that and they just want you to sell to them, it's going to be about price. You have to not make it about price. You've got to make it about them wanting you. That's number one. The second thing is if they want you, but they don't want you until next Christmas, there's no point in spending all this time to work out a quote. You can say to them, hey, that sounds really great. Let's stay in touch. Let's have a few conversations. And maybe in August or October, we'll get together and get a little bit more serious about this, right? So they've got to want you and they've got to want you now. If they want you and they want you now, they're qualified. If they're not qualified, you can get them qualified. And if they're not ever going to be qualified, don't move on with it because it's probably going to be about price or it's not going to close. Did that make sense, Simon, Mitchell? Tick, yeah. So those are probably the two most important things. I think the qualification part is probably the most important thing. Personally, I don't have a conversation with anyone that extends to the next stage unless I know that they've seen our stuff and they actually can trust. Like for us, we always say that people need two things. They need to know, first of all, what their problem is. Second of all, they need to know that we can help them solve that problem. If they don't have those two things, we've got nothing to offer them. in the kitchen world, they have to know that you can build this kitchen to whatever they want, whatever standard is, and it has to be within a certain time frame. Otherwise, you're wasting your time leading up to it. I'll leave you with this last little suggestion, because I'm sure that everybody watching here right now can say, okay, I can book a chat, I can have a showroom consultation, or you go out and measure up. The big, huge takeaway is leading up to this, people know the steps that they're going to go through with you, because you might say to them right from the very beginning, okay, the first thing is we're going to have a chat. The second thing is we're going to ask you to come into our showroom. And then we're going to do a little bit of a measure up. We're going to do some estimating. We might meet again. We might have 2 or 3 revisions for you. But then you're going to say to them, we're going to ask you at this stage, when we get to that point, we're not going to do an infinite amount of revisions until you come up with the final design, and then ask you, do you want to buy that kitchen in that final design? We're going to do maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 revisions and talk about price. And so you're comfortable with our price level, you know, we're not way more than the next guy. And then we're going to ask you, when we sit down and go through your design and your estimate at that stage, we're just simply going to ask you, do you want to work with us? Even though you haven't got the final design yet. Take that off the table, because if they want you, but they're not confident in that final design, they're still going to say no. So if you take it off the table and say, okay, if you just say yes, if this can be a no or a yes, and if it's a yes, what happens is we go on to design 4, 5, and 6, or until you're comfortable, and then you sign off on that. But all we want to know here is, do you want to work with us at this stage? Because we need to know to fit you into that time frame that you need. And if no, at least you've got no follow-up to do. So some of the work we do with clients that have given them the best rewards is, I'm sure people have this big stack of follow-up on their desk. You know, quite often I'll go into a cabinet shop and I'll see this big, huge stack of manila envelopes or folders on a desk. Oh, that's the follow-up. I've got to follow up with them. I gave them a quote a week ago or a month ago and we still haven't heard. In actual fact, I can help you eliminate that completely from the scenario just by having this little meeting here. And that is your close meeting. And if they say to you something like, it sounds great, but there's just one thing that I'm not sure of. If you email and pray, guaranteed your email server is not going to work through objections for you. They're not going to say to your email server, oh, thanks, email server. I like this quote, but there's one thing I'm not sure of, and they won't get an answer. But if you sit down with them and you say, here it is, what do you think? They're going to say something like, yeah, let's go ahead. Or they're going to go, but there's just this one thing. The other guy that did the stone, he was $1,000 less than you. Okay, so then you can go, okay, our stone was 5,000, theirs was 4,000. You might have already built some padding in this quote, and you go, great. Ours is now not 5,000. Now ours is 4,000. Do you want to go ahead with the job now? You've just removed an objection, and you've given them no reason to say no. And if you can work through those things, you'll only work through them in a conversation to a point where they go, okay, let's go ahead with it. That only happens by having a meeting and sitting down with them and asking them, here's what we've done. What do we need to do to move forward? And they'll tell you. So by having that step through process every single time, that's the process you'll follow and you'll get better results. That's as far as I'm going to go for today. That's about an hour. So Simon, Mitchell, anybody online right now or anybody watching this, you can put comments in the box. Tell me what one thing that I talked about here today that was a standout for you that maybe was a little bit of a light bulb moment or you're going to implement in your business. Give me one little takeaway from this that you can actually chuck into your process today. I see Chris John's online. I can actually see comments. They might be a little slow, but I can see those comments. Mitchell, Simon, what do we say here today that it's helped? Last paragraph, often, but so often missed by people. Yeah, closing the deal. Mitchell says, I'm always forgetting to ask better questions. Being in commercial sales, the process is a little different, but the questions are not. The process is actually the same. The questions are different. Yeah. What are the requirements to win the work? Yeah, it's such a powerful question. So just so you're aware, guys, in our program, we go to the next level down. We give things like scripts. what is it that you would need to say at these stages? It's not verbatim. It's not say this exact thing. It is, this is the tone of what you need to say at different stages. So that if you have someone at the admin level that can do this, and let's face it, that first conversation can literally be done by anybody in your business. Hi, it's Bruce, or hi, it's Sue, working for Stylecraft Kitchens. Thanks for calling. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Cool. What do you know about us? Like, anybody could ask those questions. And if the customer passes those tests, you can then pass them on to the designer. It filters and protects you from having to field all of those questions all the time. You can set this up. I have some clients that actually have an offshore VA that field these first calls. I'm not sure that I'm a fan of that, but it does work if you do it right. So we had a client up north that we set up a process called the Wendy wall. So they had Wendy in the office that wasn't being utilized. What we did was just said, okay, all inbound messages go through Wendy, and Wendy would filter those messages to the right person. Pretty soon, the owner of the business found that I'm not getting so many calls anymore. They're actually going to the people that I would have filtered them to anyway. So, all right, guys. So if you want to learn a little bit more about this, if you want to get down another layer or two and spend some time, I'm available. We can have a chat, send me a message, book a call, whatever you want to do. This shows you what you need to do. It doesn't really show you too much about how to do it. That would need more work on my part to show you how, but it certainly does show you what to do. All right. Hopefully everybody's well. Mitchell, Simon, Chris, I can see you online. There's a few other people. Thanks for attending, guys, and hopefully this has been of value. If it is, put a comment in the box, and if you want to learn more, let me know. Cool. All right. Signing off. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Hamish.
All right. Thanks, Bruce.
Anything you wanted to add, Hamish, before I close the door?
No, yeah, just you're completely right about those stacks of milliner folders. You see them everywhere.
Yeah, and they just sit there and they get moldy.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Talk to you later, guys. Peace out.